Good morning everyone and welcome to Florence. We're here in Castello di Verrazzano, where this is actually, we're going on a wine tour. We had gone around like to the cellar, all basically the lovely lady was explaining to us the different processes of creating their wine, their Chianti, which is famous in this region. The wine is usually produced between Siena and Florence, and that is where we are today. You know, when you think of Tuscany, it is such a romantic setting when you see all these vineyards, you even see the in movies, and it's so nice to actually be here to get to see the vineyards all laid across. And if you see, they're like in different elevations. There was one room where they had like all these, how would you say, very collector's items of the family who actually lives here, the Castellveranos. I believe the grandma is like 98 years old. So apart from residence, it's like a part museum, part restaurant, part experiential type of place. Very nice. So we're now going through the tour, and all these barrels that you see here, they're really for museum purposes now. Like nowadays they have like machines, pressing machines to store them and to basically from start to finish. It's just that, you know, for hygienic purposes, and honestly because they're not as romantic of a sight as these ones, we're not going to be showing you, or they're not going to be showing us that part. Now we are headed to see the private collection of the owner. So Castello di Verrazzano, the owners actually still live here. This is still a residence. So right behind me is the private collection of the family. They're just for display purposes now because they're so old that you can't really drink them anymore. So they're really collector's item, really to collect and not to drink. See all that dust over there. And then these bottles over here are basically showing the different types of soil, from humidity to the driest, because it really depends where you are, the elevation, the type of soil you have to determine what kind of quality or the blend of wine that you're going to produce. This is most humid to driest. Okay, I literally don't really know anything about wines. I'm not even going to try and pretend, but I think the whole point of this is for people like you and me who don't know much about wines. Let's learn together. So this is the first wine that was served to us, and although Chianti is really a red wine, at least from what I learned, and this vineyard or this winery is known for its red wine because it's summer. And because I think for any person who's getting into wine, you want to start with something really light, hence the white wine. So apparently this is best like with on a great summer day with appetizers, with anything light, with fish and all that. And yeah, this is something that I'm used to. Right, it's actually not dry, which I like. It's not a very dry wine, but it's also not very sweet. I actually think it's quite perfect. They served us a plate of bread with olive oil. We're not really sure why, but I think they also make olive oil here and balsamic vinegar. But here's a tip for you. If you're going to be drinking, especially like us, it's so early in the morning. We are running on an empty stomach. Oil is actually very, very good for you, and the bread to like soak up that alcohol. So oils actually slow down the processing of sugar in your stomach. It actually slows down the drunken process. Okay, this is the second one that they've served. This is the Chianti Classico. Okay, so this one, if you notice, the glass is a little bit bigger. And you compare this like with meats, again with fish, with pastas. It's almost like if the white wine was something for a little bit lighter, this one you can go with a little bit more heavy foods. But I personally think for me, whichever is more comfortable for you, because what if it's too strong for you, too dry for you, too sweet for you, right? To each his own. Wow, that is really delicious. It is such a perfect balance. It's not too dry, it's not too sweet. Wow, that's amazing. It's actually not very heavy. You know, when I think of like Merlot, when I think of all these red wines where it gets like really, really heavy. And speaking of really heavy, let me just try to cleanse my palate right here with this one. This is what you do when you're Italian at 10 a.m. Have 3 glasses of wine on an empty stomach, have some pecorino cheese, and some balsamic vinegar. I'm so sorry, guys. I'm like coughing because, okay. So we're gonna put a little bit of that vinegar on that cheese. And I asked my sister, is that what they told you to do? She's like, no. But you know what? I'm gonna do it anyway. You know, because I still have that flavor of the wine in my mouth. It actually accentuates the flavor, that punch of that balsamic vinegar. And then it's like that sweetness of that is like balanced or thrown off by the saltiness of the cheese. It's like a play of flavors in your mouth. That's actually surprisingly really good. Very nice. So if you don't have barrels, and usually we know that wine is aged in barrels, you can also age them in concrete. it is something I've never heard before. So the reason why they did this, back in the olden times, or I wouldn't say olden times, but in the past, they used to do this as well, but it wasn't really hygienic. But now, of course, with the help of modern technology, they're able to find a way to use concrete in a more hygienic, structured way. And the reason why they do this is because I think without affecting the tannins and all that, it actually makes for a much lighter wine. And they call it the entry-level wine. I hate to compare, but it's kind of like the wine that perhaps that we had earlier in the other winery, or any wine for that matter that isn't too heavy. Earlier we had just come from that room where there were barrels, and that's how I know that wine is usually aged. And then even very small barrels which we weren't able to see. So just imagine the barrels that we saw there, even much smaller. That's where Merlot is actually aged. So Merlot, if you've ever had Merlot, it's really strong. It's got a real punch to it. And so because it's only Merlot is actually aged in those barrels, small. So it's really concentrated in flavor, concentrated in that punch. So these steel tanks right here, they're for fermentation. And then for red wine, which takes a little bit longer because you also have the skins and for all that magic scientific process. Okay, so right before we have lunch, you can see these trees right behind me. They're olive trees. Although they don't press their olives here, they do it elsewhere because it's a very small, young winery. It's only 25, it's about to only turn 25 years old. And then I'm learning that these grapes over here are the local grape. I keep forgetting the name. Santo Gressa, and then Merlot. And I'm also just learning that Merlot is actually a grape. I actually kind of like Merlot because it reminds me of a dark beer. So it's pretty hardcore. I am a fan of the Merlot. So now that I'm learning, it is a grape. Our tour guide, Aldo, was saying that when you drink a glass of wine, you see all these fancy people, or at least trying to be fancy. They do that movement, they smell, and then they taste. They let the air in through the glass and all that, through your nose, and then all that. And you know what they say, right? We eat and drink, and it triggers memories. And in this case, when we take that sip of wine, and we savor it. You see these people, like, they pause and they savor that moment. It's supposed to give you like a backtrack of like, I can see the color of this wine is like a deep, let's say burgundy or violet. So it kind of tells you what grape it is. And then when they do that thing, and then you see how many waves there are around the glass, it's supposed to tell you how high the alcohol content is. And it can also probably tell you if it's a sweeter wine, if it's a drier wine. That means the type of soil that it was grown in. So you understand the history or how it was made through every sip. Lovely. Okay, so we are now about to start our beautiful lunch. You can see that there are other people who are about to have their lunch tour as well. I actually absolutely love, oh my God, look at the dogs. That dog over here is from here. He makes friends with everybody. Okay, maybe not everybody, but this dog over here, yeah, they're making friends. Super, super cute. Okay, so right now we're just waiting for our lunch to have a better appreciation. So you know those things where you have wine with food, wine pairing, and for some people They may not understand wine, you might not be a wine person. Well, that's the whole point of having a meal or having wine with your food. Like, for example, in the tour that we had earlier, the Chianti Reserva, apparently that wine is not typically drank on its own, because it's maybe for some people it's quite strong, or it's a certain flavor, or a certain, I don't know, that people don't necessarily prefer. However, when it's paired with the pecorino cheese, or perhaps with a little bit of the balsamic vinaigrette, it brings out that flavor. Okay, I know this is supposed to be a gastronomic experience, but also it's an educational experience for me, handing it down to you. Okay, so we have here our rosé wine. This is their entry-level wine. Now, of course, if you're a winemaker, I think if you're a creator of any sort, even as I'm creating right now to share with you, we, as much as we're having fun, we take our jobs, our passion so seriously. So here, the winemakers here at Querceto di Castellina, they take their wine quite seriously, their Chianti wine, their red wine. So the name of this wine is furtivo, which means sneaky. And the reason why they're saying that is because other than the wines that they take very seriously, as much as they take this seriously, this is like an entry wine that's a little bit playful, a little bit light, just to, you know, ease in and ease in that wine experience. Here we go, rosé. It is for me like a mix of a bit dry, a bit sweet, a bit floral, a bit citrusy, and just the color itself. It's absolutely, absolutely lovely, and it's so refreshing, especially now where we are. And the scenery that we have here is absolutely amazing. And then it's actually being served right now with some ragu lasagna that Francesca was actually saying should be paired, can be paired with the white wine, with the rosé. And our first, yeah, I know there's meat, so I'm only taking out the top part where there's cheese. First of all, the lasagna is already good. This is your Chianti Classico. So, it's earthier to me. It's not really fruity. It has a deeper flavor, perhaps enhanced by the saltiness of the cheese. This is the wine that's actually like aged in the concrete, the concrete barrels. Well, they're not barrels, but those concrete containers, and the bigger barrels as well. So yeah, this is pretty much like the main product that they have here in this region, using the Sangiovese grape. So while we are waiting for the rest of our food, well, ideally you should finish this first course, which is the lasagna. Why don't I share? So earlier in our first distillery, they served it with bread. So here's the little fun fact, that Tuscan bread is actually unsalted. Now, as we know, that salt is an antiseptic, it's a preservative, it's used for flavoring. It's very, very strong. I mean, the fact that you could go to the Dead Sea and start floating because of how I wouldn't know what the word is in science, and it's all because of salt. So salt truly has a chemical reaction, has a very strong chemical composition. And so when you mix that with bread and then mix it with wine, it totally alters the taste and the experience, right? Especially if you are a bona fide like sommelier of sorts. So the reason why they serve that bread with us together with the olive oil is because even if there's bread, it doesn't actually alter the taste of the wine that we are having. Now you know, Tuscan bread, unsalted. Okay, now for those of you, let's say, no, I don't really drink so much wine, I'm so scared, I'm gonna get drunk. Well, rosés, lighter wines are always, just by color alone, the lighter wines are the ones that are probably for you. However, I did ask for people like me who care about calories. And I'm sure if you're reading this and you care about calories, you would care about this too. Well, first of all, wine doesn't have fat, although it has alcohol, and alcohol turns to sugar. So if you want to know in terms of sugar, you are going to find that in the back of the bottle, where it's going to share with you how high the alcohol content is. The higher the alcohol, the higher the sugar. The higher the sugar, the more calories. So it doesn't matter what color, rosé, white, red, super red, Merlot, it doesn't matter. What you're looking for is the alcohol content. Okay, so after the lasagna, we are now going to have, a beautiful charcuterie board. I mean, come on. Holy bananas. I mean, holy grapes. Holy grapes. Wow, that is beautiful. Wow.
Very nice.
You have two different pecorino cheese. Then you have crostini with fresh tomatoes, with creamy cheese and zucchini. And then you have small burritana onions. They are really tasty. I love it. Then you have ham, salami, and mortadella with truffles. Enjoy it.
So guys, I'm learning right now in this beautiful charcuterie board, the bread with a tomato is your bruschetta. Bruschetta is the one with a tomato, but these ones over here, the ones with the cheese and the zucchini, that's not a bruschetta. This is a crostini. So let's give it a try. That cheese is so sweet. Holy banana, that is so good. And now we're having it with the Chianti Gran Selezione. This is a notch above the Chianti Reserva. Oh wow, it has a sweetness that is lingering in your tongue, even in the back of your throat. It's just slowly going down. That flavor, that warmth, and then you feel this very cool, summer breeze. Wow, that's amazing. Very good. And then of course you have your bruschetta that I'm learning is usually with your tomato. And bruschetta, even in the Philippines we have this, right? Let's have it with a different wine. So this is the Chianti Classico. It's a little bit bitter for me, I admit. I find that the Chianti Classico is a little bit more on the dry side, right? It's a little bit more on the dry side, if that's your thing. So let's have it now with a pepperoni cheese. Could you pour some balsamic vinegar? So for me, I have a very sour palate. I am all about that sour life. So just a dropping of balsamic vinegar. Well, that's not a dropping, but for me, that is. And I'm gonna have some of that Merlot, the Podalirio. Podalirio is their Merlot grape. I never really understood when people say full-bodied. I get it now. And now, so we learned that when you have a wine glass like this that has, it's quite wide, you kind of want to swirl it around because you want the air to come in. And when you want the air to come in is because, wine that has been just aged in oak, that's in an enclosed container for quite a while, it's kind of like coming out of water when you've been holding your breath for so long. It's refreshing and it makes you feel alive, it invigorates you. And so it does with the flavor of the wine as well. So you do a little bit of this. You smell, because you do want to taste with all your senses. Amazing. So good. If I'm going to be super honest, between the other winery and this one, I mean, the other winery you know, they've had a lot of experience. They've been doing this for a very, very long time. And sometimes when you do some things for a long time, you can do things in your sleep. So with that kind of treatment, you know, it's a little bit more, you know, default, just automatic, right? As opposed to this place over here, it's a new winery. I mean, 25 years. That's very, very young. And it felt more homely, it felt more warm, it felt less intimidating, especially for people like me, our group, where we don't really, you know, we're no sommeliers, or we're not like wine fanatics or know anything about wine. All we can say is, oh, it's delicious, oh, it's a little bit dry, oh, it's sweet, but that's all it is. And this felt more inviting, more accommodating. Not to say that that wasn't, but it was just a very different vibe of between like a bigger company and a smaller, I wouldn't say mom and pop shop, but like a younger company that's fresh and that's new and is, you know, trying to pave their way and is taking along for the ride. Yeah.